Friday, September 8th. I'm not going to dwell on this. I'm just going to say it and get on with my life. I'm standing in the goal at soccer practice, taking shots from some of the starting players, mostly 8th graders. They've all picked up on what the kid in the gray sweatshirt said about my goggles. They all call me Mars. That's okay with me. I've been called worse. What's important is that I'm a player, and they all recognize that I'm their starting goalie, right? So I was standing in the goal, wearing the red pullover goalie shirt, handling some pretty easy shots. Gina was over on the sideline talking to Coach Walski. I saw them kind of looking at me, and then Gino came running over and yelled, "Hey, Mars, is your name Paul Fisher?" "Yeah, Coach wants to see you." "All right." I figured this was it. This was going to make it all official. The coach was going to tell me how impressed he has been by my play and goal, and so on. I hustled over to the sideline. "Coach Walski, you wanted to see me? Are you Paul Fisher?" "Yes, sir." He looked at his clipboard and flipped through some pages until he found a memo. Paul, you have an IEP. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir." Coach Walski looked pained. "I'm sorry to tell you this, Paul, but you're not eligible for the program." "Sir? You can't play. You can't play soccer for Lake Windsor Middle School." "What are you talking about, can't play? I can play. I'm one of the best players here." No. I mean, you're not eligible to play. I have a memo from Mr. Murrow saying that you're in a special program for the visual handicap. Is that right? So what? I can see fine. That's not the point. I don't understand what you're talking about. We have to carry insurance on every boy and girl in the program, or we can't play, period. If we lose our insurance, we lose our program. I'm sorry, but there's no way we can justify putting a visually handicapped student in the goal of all places, where he could get his head kicked in. He looked at me like I was crazy to think otherwise. Then he added, "Come on now." I screamed, "No, you come on now. You see if you can kick my head in. You see if you or anybody else here can get one ball past me. One ball." Coach Walski pulled back. He changed his tone. "Paul, I'm sorry. I know you're upset. I know you're disappointed. But try to understand this. It'd be the same situation if you had a heart murmur or a hernia or whatever. I have to play it straight with the insurance company. If any kid has any physical problem, I have to report it, and I know that this condition of yours will not be acceptable to the insurance company. Again, I'm sorry." He got even sorrier a few seconds later. I still can't believe what I did. I knelt down on that sideline, took off my sports goggles, and started to cry. I didn't say another word. I just put my head down and cried and sobbed. Coach Walski was as much as at a loss as I was. Neither of us knew what to do next. He just stood there and watched me. I heard him call an assistant over and tell him to organize a scrimmage. Coach Walski stood a little off to the side and waited. I finally stopped. I wiped my face with my goalie shirt, put my goggles back on, and walked from the field to the parking lot. I stood in the bus shelter until 5, when Mom pulled up in the station wagon. Dad was right behind her in the Range Rover. Mom rolled down the passenger side window. "What are you doing here? Are you all right?" "I get kicked off the team." "What? What happened?" "Coach Walski said I'm in a program for the handicapped, so I'm off the team." That's outrageous. He can't do that." "Well, he just did it. He said they can't get insurance for me because I'm in a handicap program. You know all about that, right, Mom?" "Me? What do you mean?" "You told them I'm handicapped. You told them I'm visually impaired." "Darling, you are. I just told them the truth." "That's not the truth. I can see. Don't you know that? Why did you fill out that stupid form when you know I can see? You saw me play in Houston. You saw me make 30 saves in one game. Did I look visually impaired then?" "Paul, darling, I did not know that the IEP form had anything to do with playing on the soccer team. I would never have filled it out if I did. I know now, I know how important this is to you. Listen now, your father will straighten this out with Coach Walski." She turned off her engine, got out, and went back to speak to Dad. I didn't listen, but I guess she explained the situation because Dad got out and walked to the soccer field. I remained standing in the bus shelter, watching the black outline of an osprey slowly crossing the sky to its nest. It was clutching something that flashed brightly, reflecting the sun. I said to myself, "There goes another one of your koi, Mr. Costello." Mom was watching me, but she didn't say anything. Did she really believe that Dad was going to straighten this out? We both watched Dad talk to Coach Walski, and we both watched him walk back to the station wagon. He stood at the passenger window between Mom and me and said, "All right, here's the deal. They have a problem with insurance. They can't put Paul in the goal because of his vision. However, Coach Walski does want you to manage the team. He hasn't appointed a manager yet for the season. He wants you to take the job. He said to tell you that you be on the bus, you be in charge of the team and the equipment for every game, home and away." I looked at Mom's face. At least she understood. At least she had a clue. I didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. I looked back at Dad and told him calmly, "I'm not a water boy, Dad. I'm not a team manager. I'm a player." Then I climbed into the back of the station wagon and we all started for home. After a few miles, Mom whispered, "Darling, do you want me to go speak to Mr. Morrow?" I said, "For what for? To tell him that your vision has improved?" "Why, do you believe that?" We drove in silence for a while. Then she answered, "Yes, I do. I do believe it. And I do remember those games in Houston. You were the best goaltender in that league. I was terrified to let you play, but you turned out to be the best goaltender in that league." I looked up at the rearview mirror and saw tears in her eyes. "Paul, all I can do is apologize and promise that I'll never mention your eyesight to anyone ever again." I was too hurt and angry to tell her that I appreciated those words, that those words helped, but they did. Friday, September 8th, later. The obituary in the Tangerine Times said that Costello would have been a public viewing tonight and a private burial ceremony tomorrow. I was actually looking forward to going. For one thing, I had never been to what Mom was calling a Catholic wake, but also I was feeling very, very low about myself and about the soccer team, and I realized that Joey was the only person I knew who was feeling worse. He was someone who even I could feel sorry for. I squeezed into my blue suit, and Mom, Dad, and I drove in the Volvo to O'Sullivan's funeral home on Route 89. As we drove, I pointed out the steady series of osprey nests, each at least 10 feet in diameter, built along the tops of the high tension wires. Dad said, "They ought to get rid of those things." "Why, Dad?" "Why? They could short out the power for the whole town. That's a crazy place to build a nest." I thought to myself, maybe so, but at least the osprey don't have to smell the muck fire, and their streets don't get flooded every night, every time it rains. I wondered if their nests ever got hit by lightning. We pulled into the parking lot of the funeral home. There were lots of 4x4s and sports cars. All the football players and a lot of the seniors who knew Mike Costello had come. Eric was in the parking lot too, with a big group of kids around him that included Paige, Arthur, and Tina. As we walked inside, I began to get a scared feeling in the pit of my stomach. I had never seen the dead boy. I had never been to a funeral home. There was a powerful scent of flowers, too powerful, as we paused in the lobby. Two separate viewings were happening. The viewing for Michael J. Costello was taking place in the room to the right. As soon as the wooden doors opened, I could see him. Mike Costello. He was laid out in a casket. He had bright lights over him. His right side was facing the public. The casket was steel gray with a white satin interior. I was really amazed. Here I was, looking at an actual dead person, a person who I'd seen alive just days before. Mike Costello looked terrific. He looked like he was lit from within, like a wax statue in a football hall of fame. I didn't even know how to behave. I had never been through anything like this before, so I copied Mom and Dad. They walked over to the casket and knelt on the padded kneelers. They said a short prayer and got up. I waited for them to finish, then I knelt down along at the casket. Closer up, Mike Costello didn't look so terrific. There was no hair on the left side of his head. There was no hair on his left hand either. I got back up and looked for Mom and Dad. They were waiting behind another couple for a chance to speak to Mr. and Mrs. Costello. I walked up and stood with them. I was surprised to hear how light their conversation was. They weren't even talking about Mike. They were talking about the lake at our development and about what might be happening to the koi. I looked around for Joey, but I didn't see him. I saw football players and cheerleaders and student council types spread out all over the room. Mr. Bridges was there. So were Coach Warner and the other football coaches. It was our turn to talk to the Costellos, Mom expressed how sorry we all were about the terrible accident. I just muttered, "I'm sorry," and shook hands with them. Mrs. Costello said, "Joey will be glad to see you here. I know he wants to talk to you. He wants to ask you something." The room was just about filled, mostly with high schoolers and adults, but then I did see a group of middle school kids coming in, and Joey was with them. A girl from my math class named Kara. Kara Clifton gave him a big hug right in front of everybody. In fact, she kind of hung on him. Then she and the rest of the middle school kids went over and found seats. Everybody in the room seemed to be sitting down. Joy was alone for a minute, so I went over and said, "How's it going?" "Hey, Fisher, it's going, it's going." "What's happening in soccer practice?" "I don't know, got kicked off the team." "Yeah, right." "No, no kidding. I really did. I got kicked off." "No way." "Yeah, way." Look, the priest just came in. I gotta go sit down, but I want to hear about this. I gotta ask you something, too." I went over and sat with my mom, with mom and dad. A young priest came in and started saying the rosary with everybody. We didn't know what that was all about, but we sat there with our heads bowed and said some of the prayers. Then the priest spoke about Mike. He talked about what a good guy he was. What else could you say about Mike? "I don't know anybody except Eric and Arthur who wouldn't say that about him." A lot of people in the room were crying. A whole lot of people. After the priest left, some of the kids left too, and some of the adults got up and started to talk again. We stayed in our seats for a while. Mr. Dunley went back to the casket and knelt there with his eyes tightly closed for a long time. Mom pointed out people from Lake Windsor Downs, a gray and white Tudor, a York with a circular driveway. Paige was talking to a man I recognized from the football practice meeting. He was her father, Arthur Bayer, her Sir Senior. Mom pointed out Tina, Tourette's mother, too. She looked like she could be Tina's older sister, very young looking. I recognized a few of the other parents who had come to the meeting in our great room, but I don't know their names. After a few minutes, we walked out into the lobby. That's where I saw Joey again. He had one arm around Kara Clifton, who was crying uncontrollably. He was shaking hands with Coach Warner with his other arm. A group of guys from the soccer team were there, too. A couple of the toe stubbers. They obviously hadn't heard that I was off the team. One of them said, "What's up, Mars?" Which I didn't mind at all. That nickname is all I'm ever going to get from the Lake Windsor soccer program. Carrie Gardner came up and put her hand on Kara's shoulder. She looked over at me and said, "Hi." She explained to Kara that their ride was waiting and they had to go. Then she turned back to me and said, "I hear you're a great soccer player." I just stood there, unable to think of anything to reply. Carol let go of Joey, asked Carrie for a tissue, and the two of them left. Joey joined his mother and father near the door, where a line had formed to say goodbye. It must have been a tough thing to stand there and say something to every one of those people, but that's exactly what they did. When Mom and Dad got up there, the Costellos started asking them about the meeting in our great room, how it had gone, and who had said what. Joey picked up their conversation where it had left off. "So, how did you get kicked off the soccer team?" "I thought you were on the bus." "I was on the bus. At least I think I was." "Walski kicked you off?" "Yeah, I don't know, sort of. Murrow sent him this memo saying that I'm in a handicap program, a program for the visually impaired. He freaked. He said he'd lose his insurance policy or something." Joey was shaking his head. "Oh, man, that's cold. Maybe my dad can file a lawsuit for you or something. Is that right?" "Yeah, he's a lawyer. He can file a lawsuit. It's got to be against your civil rights. Your parents are paying taxes so you can go to the school, right? Why shouldn't you be allowed to play on the soccer team?" "You're right. It's not your fault if you're a geek." Thanks. Thanks a lot." "Hey, you know what I'm saying?" "Yeah, yeah. Look, do you want to go to the carnival with us tomorrow?" I was shocked to hear Joey say that. I answered, "Isn't tomorrow the funeral?" "Well, the funeral is first thing tomorrow morning. My mom thinks it's a good idea that I go out and do something with my friends tomorrow afternoon. Life goes on," she said. "We've been doing nothing but all this funeral stuff, since it happened. So she says I need to get out and do something to take my mind off it." He looked over toward his parents. "They're more worried about me now than they are about Mike. You know what I'm saying?" I looked at Joey's parents, then at mine. He asked me again, "So are you up for it, for the carnival?" "Yeah, sure, I guess. I don't know anything about it. I heard the announcements about it at school. It's pretty cool for Tangerine. It's low rent, but it's cool in a low rent kind of way. I'll call you tomorrow afternoon." "Yeah, all right." Mom and Dad and Costello's finished their conversation. I wish I knew what they talked about. It must have been serious because Mom and Dad didn't exchange another word all the way home. That was all right with me. I needed time to think. I looked out the window at the starry night, at the high tension wires and the osprey nest, and I thought over and over again about what I could have said back to Carrie Gardner.